that the sacrifice of freedom and rationality sometimes gives you an advantage in promises, threats, and bargaining. This is a theory that's been proposed by a number of game theorists and economists, and just to show how unromantic it is, I'll illustrate it by one theory where I'll try to reverse engineer romantic love. Now, unsentimental social scientists and veterans of the dating scene agree on one thing, that marriage is a kind of marketplace, that all of us are in search of the best-looking, smartest, nicest, funniest, richest person who will settle for us. So there's a kind of a smart shopping is part of what goes on in the mating marketplace. But of course, your dreamboat, the best person that you're matched with, is a needle in a haystack, and you might die single if you wait until he or she shows up. So there's a trade-off of the value of a potential mate versus time. So it means that most people at some point set up house with the best person that they can find so far. There's a huge amount of data from social psychology that bears this out. One of the most obvious manifestations is assortative mating, namely that people in a couple are generally equally matched in terms of overall desirability, which is exactly what you would get in a marketplace in which you basically sell yourself for the best possible return. But there is something that is left out of this account. We all know people, maybe some of us are people, who are fixed up with what on paper seems like the ideal match. The person is nice looking and nice and entertaining and smart and so on, but you just don't hit it off. Cupid didn't strike, nothing clicked, the earth didn't move, and so on. There seems to be an irrational part of love on top of this general narrowing down the market by value, and that there's kind of a capriciousness to it and an involuntariness. No one can will themselves to fall in love. The question is, why? Why do we seem to be designed this way? Well, the economists point out that there's a problem for the rational strategy called the commitment problem. Namely, if you are setting up house with the best person you found so far, it leaves your partner in a vulnerable position, namely that when someone better shows up, which will happen according to the law of averages, it will be rational for you to dump your partner at that point and go live with Tom Cruise or Cindy Crawford, who just moved in next door. Being able to anticipate this, they would have been foolish to have hooked up with you to begin with, because a commitment has costs. There are foregone opportunities to fall in love with someone else. You sell your stereo when you move in with someone, and you may bear children, and so on. So how do you set up a situation in which what's really in the long-run interests of both people can be executed, given that it may be rational for either of them to desert, therefore making it irrational for the other one to commit to begin with? Well, a solution is, if you don't decide to fall in love for rational reasons, you can't decide to fall out of love for rational reasons. That if there is something that's visibly involuntary about, as we say, Cupid striking, about you selecting as a person as the one that you're committed to, then you're in a sense guaranteeing your promise. So that romantic love in this view is a guarantor of the implicit promise you make in a romantic relationship to spend your life with someone and to forsake all others. It's an example of a large range of situations that economists discuss where lack of freedom or rationality is an advantage. One example is legal documents such as leases. That the signing a lease, which restricts the freedom of both the tenant and the landlord, works to the advantage of the tenant because the landlord can't kick him out, and works to the advantage of the landlord because the tenant can't leave suddenly and leave the landlord holding the bag. Likewise, there's a part of the law that says that corporations have the right to sue and the right to be sued. Now, the right to be sued, what kind of right is that? Well, it's the right to enter into promises with someone who might be hurt as a result. If some of your options are restricted, you are in a better position to have your promises taken seriously. Give you one other example. The law that allows a bank to foreclose on a mortgage and repossess your house makes it worth the bank's while to lend you the money to buy the house to begin with, and so, paradoxically, works to the advantage of the borrower. Some evidence for this analysis of love as a kind of emotional guarantor analogous to a contract is that romantic love is universal. Contrary to what most intellectuals believe, romantic love is not a recent invention of Hollywood scriptwriters, but there's evidence for it in the ethnographic record in all cultures. That if you look at the content of courtship strategies, you see that there's a strong orientation to the individual. If you were to murmur into a date's ear, you're the best-looking, richest, smartest person that I've been able to find so far, it would probably kill the romantic mood. What you want to say is, I love you because you're you. I like the way you walk. I like the way you talk. I can't help it. When I gave this talk, by the way, at an MIT faculty seminar, one of the professors in attendance, upon hearing this point, went, "That's what I've been doing wrong."